Hello and welcome to the Mikado Logo 14 build video series, exclusively on HeliFreak. Anyway, I'm going to do a little kit overview and parts bag overview before we get started. Basically, in the kit comes the manual, of course, a big bag of parts bags, the canopy, and the boom. This definitely is a kit. There's nothing really pre-built here, and everything will be assembled. So basically, again, almost all the heli comes basically in parts bags. So what are the parts bags and how is the manual set up? So let me talk about that a minute. For instance, on this first step, mainframes. If you look up at the top here, it says bag 1. I'm sorry, let me go to mainframes. It says bag 1, bag 4, bag 12. So what does all that mean? Well, it means you're going to be taking some parts out of bag 1, bag 4, bag 12, etc., etc. So those parts are in bags numbered by those bags. But unlike other helicopters you may have built, a bag does not mean a step. On some of the other helicopters, you may get parts in a bag called bag 1 for step 1, and the only thing in the bag are all the parts to complete that step. In this particular case, these are bagged differently. For instance, in the mainframes, bag 1. Bag 1 is basically the lead bag. What that means is the majority of parts are in that bag. But that does not mean that bag 1 is only for step 1. There are other parts in bag 1 that are used throughout the manual in many different steps. So it's just important to note that the bags don't mean the steps. It's just how the parts are bagged in numbers, and it will tell you which bags are used for a particular step in the manual. So, for instance, if we go to the next page, this one says bag 1. Again, it tends to be the lead bag for this step. Bag 10 and bag 12. Let's talk about bag 10 and bag 12 for a minute. Bag 10 and bag 12, basically our 10 is just about all the bearings used in the entire helicopter. Okay, bag 12 is a bunch of hardware. Mostly the machine screws. You notice there's not a lot of nuts in here. It's mostly the machine screws and standoffs and links. And we'll get, as we go through the manual, we'll see where they're used, but bottom line, these two bags are your primary hardware bags. But that does not mean all the hardware is in these bags. For instance, if we go to bag 1, you'll see that there's a lot of nuts and other superfluous hardware in these bags as well. So basically what you'll be doing is you'll be using nuts from bag 1 in those steps, and you'll be using bolts from bag 12 in some of the steps. So it's important to see which parts come out of which bags, and I will touch on that or talk to that as I go through the steps. But just realize that each manual has a set of bags, and we'll be pulling parts out of each one and identifying those parts and pulling them out. Now the nice thing about this manual is this inset picture here is to scale. So if you're unsure on the length of a screw, rather than whip out a ruler and measure it, you can just hold the screw up to the drawing, because this is to scale, and you can determine which parts are being used by lining them up with this drawing. Okay, so basically that's it. I just wanted to touch on the parts bags and what they really are, and the manual layout, and we'll go ahead and get started. Now, as usual in my build videos, I may give tips or do something different or something that may not even be explained in the manual. So I'll point those tips out as we go, and I may not follow the manual page for page, depending on something I see or want to do slightly differently than the manual's organized, and I'll touch on those as I go through. Anyway, so with that overview, let's get started and have some fun.